to Every Dollar Counts with Josh and Jay, a weekly shot of truth serum for your investment and insurance questions. I'm Josh Knoll, the owner of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jay Stubbs, Regional Director for First Protective Insurance Group. We are brought to you on the Prime Capital Investment Advisors Podcast Network. Today we have a very special episode for you. Joining us in studio is Mr. Will Stye, the Managing Director of Prime Capital Investment Advisors Tennessee office, which is based in Nashville, as well as an actively serving CPA. Will's going to be joining us, Jay and I, to kick off our Business Owner Strategies and Solutions campaign, which we are kind of endearingly call our Boss Series.
That's a great name.
I love it. A 5-part series specifically designed for the retirement needs of successful business owners. If you own a business and would like to learn more about these concepts, you need to listen up. But before we dive into all this, let's have our friends from Sloth Racer Band kick us off. Get started, quick housekeeping for compliance. Jay Stubbs and First Protective are not affiliated with Prime Capital Investment Advisors or Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, and Will Stye is not affiliated with Gulf Coast Financial Advisors or First Protective. So with that out of the way, what I'm going to do, I'm going to lay out the 5 topics of our Boss Series campaign, with each topic having its own dedicated podcast in our series. Succession planning, buy, sell, or operating agreement, small business defined benefit and cash balance, NonQualified deferred compensation, and employee stock option purchase plan, or better known as an ESOP. So before we get into that, Jay, Will, how y'all doing?
Man, I'm great. It's good to be with you, both of you, this morning, and looking forward to having some discussions around some of these things. The topics, if you're listening to this, you may have just heard something that you might be thinking about. So we're ready to dive into this and give you a little bit of information, and hopefully, Will, you can chime in and have a good conversation about all of these different business owner topics.
Absolutely. I appreciate having a seat at the table, and thanks for the invite, Josh.
Well, thanks for coming down from Nashville. That's pretty cool, huh?
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what, Jay, I'm going to kick it to you first. Would you mind to give our listeners just a brief overview of the upcoming succession planning conversation we're going to have later?
Succession planning in and of itself can mean several different things to several different people. If you're a sole proprietor business owner and you run a business, succession planning to you might mean, what am I going to do with this business that I have built over the last 10, 15, 20, 30, even 40 or 50 years? And so you might have to have some internal discussions or discussions with your family or your key advisors on what to do with your business when you're ready to pull the trigger and retire. For other business owners, partnerships, think of in terms of 2 guys got together in the business in their early 20s and they've built something. They have to have a discussion on what's the next step in succession planning of what do they want to transfer to their family? Do they want to have one guy retire and the other one keep running it? Or do they want to collect their chips at the table and move on to the next step and maybe that's retirement or maybe another business. But sometime during the conversation with their advisors, they need to determine what the game plan is for succession and put it in writing and discuss it with all of your key advisors.
Perfect. Very well said. Will, I'm going to jump to you because I know all these topics are things that are in your wheelhouse. You got a lot of depth and experience with. But the first thing I want to start with, if you'd give the listeners kind of an overview of what we're going to dive into on the BuySell podcast.
Sure. When it comes to buy-sell, people obviously think of what happens if I'm not here, if there's been a premature death, if there's been a disability. And the thing I would encourage any business owner is, literally from the day you begin your operations, even if you were a solo owner, have an understanding with your loved ones. In the case of a female business owner who has a spouse, a husband, make sure that you've communicated and as Jay pointed out, have something in writing that's definitive about what you would like to see happen next. And in that case, if I don't have a partner, I'm rolling along, perhaps there's a competitor in your area, perhaps there's someone that would consider an overture to buy your business. That's certainly something that somebody should consider and have a conversation with a loved one about. And then, and Jay alluded to this, with partnerships or multiple owners, that's really where it becomes extremely vital to have a written plan with a qualified legal professional to document that. But having an advisor available to help that legal professional who's really specifically focused on drafting documents, make sure that they understand the nuances of the business. Perhaps there's some age disparity between partners. One person's going to leave out 10 years ahead of all the rest of them. How do you structure that? And then, quite frankly, it doesn't do you any good to have a buy-sell agreement if it's not properly funded. If you don't have a mechanism for making sure those owners who take their leave are not with a plan and won't have a resource to go to, have a sinking fund, if you will, with dollars in it dedicated for that purpose.
Perfect. And for the listeners, that's going to be episode 8 in our series. While I got you, Will, does that kind of dovetail into small business defined benefit and cash balance? Is that a good segue into that topic of our podcast?
Definitely would be. As a business matures, as it starts hitting its stride, it becomes profitable, and an owner ends up determining that there is more than enough cash flow to support the needs of the business, support their own household needs for spending. There's this extra. So what do I do with my extra? And certainly the first thing people think of is having a qualified plan, a 401k. Once a business owner has established that and is utilizing it to its full extent, what we're seeing in the market is a resurgence in defined benefit, what's traditionally referred to as a pension plan, and then a close cousin to it called cash balance plans. This is where an owner's really hitting their stride. They're more than covering household spending, and they have an appetite for greater savings than what a 401k plan would permit or allow for. It's typically a group of less than 50 employees. We'll certainly get into it more here on another segment of the podcast that we're going to have, but that's where we're seeing a resurgence in the defined benefit market.
Perfect. All right, Jay, episode, I believe, number 10 is going to be on non-qualified deferred comp. So if you don't mind, take listeners through a little overview of that.
So sometimes a business owner says, okay, I've done the qualified plan and I have to do it for everybody to follow ERISA guidelines under the Department of Labor. Can I do anything for anybody else and maybe exclude some of the rank and file employees? Can I do something special for myself? Can I do something special for a few key people? And I don't want to have this tax liability today. I want to do something special for myself and maybe set it up for retirement. So that's what we call non-qualified deferred comp. We can install a plan at the business that says you're going to get this money, but you're going to get it down the road, and you can do it you can exclude anybody in this company that you would like. You pick and choose who you'd like to receive this benefit, and we're going to set it up, put it in play, fund it over the time frame, and then when you're ready to retire, you've got this to supplement your retirement. Or if you want to use it as an exit strategy, you can do it if you so choose. But yeah, business owners typically will look at non-qualified deferred comp as a layer on top of their qualified plan, their cash balance plan, their defined benefit plan, all of which are something that Will talked about.
Perfect, very well. All right, and then to wrap up our topics we're going to discuss, next up is going to be Employee Stock Option Purchase Plan, better known as ESOP. Will, I know you've got great expertise in this, so don't mind take listeners through a brief overview of that.
Sort of dovetail with what Jay just had described about having key people and having that engine and keeping the engine driving well. Certain business owners, as a part of their overall succession plan, as they near an exit, as they begin to say, you know what, in a case I'm going to be 60 years old in 3 years, I'd really like to consider how do I pull chips off the table, a phrase we'll often use, and how do I do that in a structure that'll help the people that have helped me. Perhaps these people have been in my non-qualified deferred comp program. How do I create an opportunity for them to end up becoming an owner of the company? And that's where an employee stock ownership plan comes into play. It is a qualified plan. It is governed by the Department of Labor and the Internal Revenue Service. It is a unique animal. It's something that I really get passionate about because ultimately you'll hear oftentimes people talk about, hey, my culture of my company, my employees take an ownership mentality. Well, let's take that a step further. Let's go from a mentality to an actual fact. They are owners, and oftentimes you'll see ESOPs logos and different things, an employee-owned company. And oftentimes the owner can look back and say, listen, I've made available to these people who have helped me grow this business and ultimately be extremely successful. I want to reward them and then allow them to participate in the ownership of this company go forward. And the numbers are the statistics you'll see, 30, 35, 40% more profitable an ESOP company versus one that's not. Just because all of a sudden when you have a meeting in the conference room and somebody's walking out, there's going to be somebody turn off the light and say, our light bill, we got to be sensitive about how much the light bill charges us money. So we need to be careful about that. So this whole idea of bringing people in the loop and allowing for them to become owners of the company is a win-win in an owner's mind that is so inclined.
Well, that's fantastic. All right, so listeners, as you heard all these different topics, what's going to happen is we're going to have a dedicated podcast to each of those individual subjects. So we get to nerd out a little bit, and as you can tell, this is going to be great. We've got 3 very qualified, very experienced people here talking about this. So succession planning is going to be episode 7. The buy, sell, or operating agreement is going to be episode 8. The small business defined benefit and cash balance is going to be episode 9. Non-qualified deferred comp will be 10, and then we'll finish up with employee stock option purchase plan, ESOP, in episode 11. So be sure to turn in. Anything else from you all before I wrap up the first one here?
So you mean, Josh, all we've done is create all of these different topics and we're putting them in 15, 20-minute segment podcasts so that if anybody's interested, they can just pick and choose when they want to listen to this stuff, and they can forward it on to their colleagues, their business partners, their associates, and say, hey, this is a topic we've been discussing here at our meetings recently. We need to maybe get together with one of these guys or all of them and figure it out.
Absolutely. And Jay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to provide some contact info here. And to further that note, what we're going to be doing in each individual show, this is not going to be a long-winded beat your head over with a hammer on explaining all this stuff. This is going to be 2 or 3 really practical things that you need to consider with each topic, and then maybe a couple of ideas or concepts or solutions to think about addressing those issues. So I think we've got the right team assembled here, and I think it's going to be great. All right, Willie, got anything before we dive on further?
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be good. All right, so if you think any of these topics apply to you, why don't you take advantage of our 50 years, that makes us sound really old, Jay, our 50 years of collective experience, and reach out to us, start a conversation. You can text or call 251-327-2124. That's 251-327-2124 to leave a message. Plus, you can visit gulfcoastfa.com or pciawealth.com to hear this podcast and our other podcasts. While you're there, like Jay said, please feel free to share the show. If you got somebody you think might be interested, you got a business owner you know, send them out to us. Lastly, to all you independent and semi-independent advisors and agents out there that are listening and interested in the value that Jay Stubbs brings to the table for guys like Will and I, or can bring to your practice, you can find him at jstubbs.com. That's JAYSTUBBS.com. All right, so first kickoff in the can. The Boss Series is off and running. I want to thank Will Stye of Prime Capital Investment Advisors for joining us. You did a great job right off the bat. First podcast, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now we got our wind underneath us. Now the adrenaline's kicking. Also, thanks to Johnny Gwynn, our producer of Deep Fry Studios. I want to thank my co-host Jay Stubbs, and a huge shout out to all you out there listening that have joined Jay and I on this journey, and to those of you that are joining us now. This has been Every Dollar Counts with Josh and Jay. Advisory services offered through Prime Capital Investment Advisors, LLC, PCIA, a federally registered investment advisor. PCIA, doing business as Prime Capital Wealth Management, PCWM, and Qualified Plan Advisors, QPA. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors is independent of Prime Capital Advisors. Information presented is for educational purposes only, is not an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any securities. All investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, be sure to consult a tax professional before implementing any tax or investment strategies.